I think one of the big problems with Bengal that BJP has continuously faced is that Mamata Banerjee's personal brand is untouchable. My disappointment is that the right wing is adopting the exact same techniques of the left wing. Mera naam hai pote jo apne baap ke bhi nahi hote. So it is...
Columns didn't come your way, publishing didn't come your way because they said, listen, tone down your right wing.
Yes. The thing is that publishing, it has a huge left-wing bias. The left-wing guy has the left-wing guy who reads the left-wing books, who publishes the left-wing author. So everybody is left-wing. Bharatiya Yatra, great success. What is he tapping into when he's walking? Who walked the length of the country? Mahatma Gandhi, right? Goes pick salt, brings down the empire. Let me tell you something which is a controversial thing. I'm kind of giving away some of the stuff that I want to put in my next book. One of the alarming things that I've seen in the US, as we have Russia and Putin, there's a significant population of the Americans who support Russia against their own country.
How are you a fan of Mithun Chakraborty of that era?
My father they have these old recorders, and there was always Shantidev Ghosh, Rabindra Sangeet, day in, day out. On the other hand, there was this loudspeaker which was playing I Am a Disco Dancer. D se hota hai dance, and it's like I se hota hai item, and that is so much better than what is this guy saying?
Namaste, Jai Hind. You're watching or listening to another edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. My guest today is Arnab Ray, also known as the Greatbong. He's an author, podcaster, and you must have seen him on social media platforms. Our conversation today is about Indian pop culture, Indian politics, American elections, and much more. Arnab lives in the US, and of course, we talk about Mithun Chakraborty and Gunda, something that Arnab or the Greatbong writes about on social media. He's one of India's most widely read bloggers, having won the publicly voted Indibloggies Blog of the Year in 2006 and 2008. He's written for the Washington Post, Outlook, and the Times of India. He's a director of cybersecurity and lives in the US. He's known for his sarcastic take on Indian film industry, Indian politics, and society in general. Thank you, Arnab, for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
I'll podcaster when podcasting wasn't a thing, and you've written books which are like completely different genre, and I have Ishan out here, so you guys know about the 90s era, which you're a specialist on that, so we'll talk about that in the podcast. Let me begin with Shakchunni, the new book. So please buy summer vacation reading if horror is your genre which you like reading. So tell me, how did Shakchunni come about? Because after this is your third, right?
No, this is in terms of the number of books I've written in horror, or the number of books I've written, period. This is my 6th book.
6th, okay.
And I also have a medical device cybersecurity book.
Sultan, I know.
Yes, so I've written May I Have Your Attention Please. Yeah. Then I wrote The Mine.
The Mine.
Then I wrote Yatra. Then I wrote Sultan of Delhi. Then I wrote Mahabharata Murders. Then I said I will never write a book again, and I wrote a medical device cybersecurity book. It's a textbook, totally different. And then I wrote Shakchunni.
Okay, so why horror? Why Shakchunni?
Well, horror is my favorite genre of all time in terms of watching movies. No, I'm not just talking about Ramsay Brothers, but in general, like good horror. And May I Have Your Attention Please was not the first book I wanted to write. I wanted to write The Mine, but I couldn't.
It was also Pliss. P-L-I-S-S.
Pliss.
The way Indians say
exactly. So I was lucky that I wrote MIHAP, which is the acronym, in 2010, because nowadays I would have been cancelled after every chapter of the book. I cannot write that book anymore. Yesterday I had somebody in one of the tweet-ups, I don't even know if you call them that, tweet-ups, who said, why haven't you written a chapter, why haven't you written a sequel?
There's no Twitter, so it's X. So it's not an X-up.
Yeah, mix-up. Yeah. And I said, I can't write it today because I would be cancelled so many times. But I was lucky that I wrote that. But I wouldn't have been able to sell my horror novel as the first novel because the publishers wanted a spin-off from my blog, basically. It was that or an a biography of Mithun Chakraborty, which was the original idea that they had. So we want you to write a biography of Mithun Chakraborty.
Have you met him ever?
I've never met him. And I said, look, I can't write... So just a context. So I had written a humorous post about Mithun Chakraborty very early in the blog. That was what made my blog become viral in days when the word viral wasn't defined. So they wanted, so it was HarperCollins, they wanted me to write a biography of Mithun Chakraborty. I said, look, I'm a fan of Mithun Chakraborty. If you really want a biography, it has to be a serious biography. It can't be like an extension of a gag. So for a biography, I need to go to Russia, because that's where his movies were insanely popular in Russia, because what happened in the USSR days was that they stopped any kind of American movies from coming in pre-internet, and they were pretty successful in doing it. So they never saw the disco era. So the disco era actually came to USSR through Mithun Chakraborty. So it was like an indirect. And so he was huge in the USSR at one point of time. So in order to understand Mithun Chakraborty, you first need to go to Calcutta. That part is fine to understand his Naxal days. Then from that, he went to Bombay. Bombay is fine. Then Russia is a huge part. And then he went to Ooty, and he bought a hotel, and there is like his end career stuff was there. That was where Gunda was made. So we have to cover all of that. And are you okay with paying for that? And they said, absolutely not. Why don't you just write an extension of your blog? And that was how Mihap happened. But then I wrote mine. Then Yatrik was, it's a strange book, but it was, there was no novel. So there was no Bengali novel. So I can't write in Bengali. I'm not that good in Bengali. English is my language. But there was no Bengali novel which was about the fall of CPM and the rise of Trinamool Congress. So it's a political novel about the fall of CPM and the rise of Trinamool Congress. Nobody had written. It's not political at all, but that's the backdrop of it. So it's based on true political events that happened in Kolkata.
But you weren't living in India at that time, were you? You were in the US already?
I was in the US, that's true, but that was when Trinamool Congress. But the seeds of the rise of Trinamool Congress had been lain, I think mixing my metaphors here, when I was in India. That was because Mamata Banerjee used to be my MP.
Okay.
So initially, so I saw Mamata Banerjee growing up. When she got beaten up by the CPM, I remember my mother came to pick me up because violence had broken out all over the city when she was beaten up by the CPM. I was in high school then. That was, and fourth was Sultan of Delhi, which was about the fixers of New Delhi. That was the one that was adapted on Hotstar and was bombarded. All of you who watched the World Cup absolutely have seen the trailer of Sultan of Delhi. Then I wrote Mahabharata Murders, which was again adapted, but it was adapted on a Bengali OTT, Hoichoi. And by that time, everything with working with publishers and stuff, I was so pissed off. I decided this is not worth my time. And so I just took a hiatus. I had started writing Shakchunni a long time ago and I just dropped it. Then I wrote this medical device cybersecurity book, which ironically is the book that's made me the most money, but the least number of people have read it.
This is non-fictional.
It is non-fiction. I'm like, in real life, I'm a medical device cybersecurity guy.
Wow.
So I'm a PhD in computer science. And so that is what I did. That life finances this life.
Right.
I went totally there and I wrote the medical device cybersecurity book. And then I said, okay, all right, I'll finish Shakchunni. So I finished Shakchunni, and by that time, things had changed a little bit, at least I felt. And so I'm kind of still looking to write the next book. And
who is Shakchunni, and why is this? What is it? What is unique about Ghosts of Bengal?
So the inspiration behind this was when we were growing up. Every Bengali child growing up has read this book called Thakurmar Jhuli, which translates to English as Grandmother's Sack of Stories. So it's fairy tales, but it's about ghosts and goblins, and none of them it's not horror at all, but
supernatural.
It's kind of supernatural, but it is for kids. It is for kids. It is absolutely for kids. So one of the stories was about the Shakchunni. So in Bengali lore, there are different kinds of possessions, and even in possessions, there's very subtle the difference. So Shakchunni, for instance, is the ghost of is a ghost of a married woman, of an unsatisfied married woman who did not experience the bliss of conjugal life, who possesses another happy person to live that person's life. So again, the way I presented it, if you read it as a kid, you will not present it, you will not think of it in these terms, but that's what it is. So years later, when my daughter was like 2 years old or something like that, and we were watching this YouTube. In YouTube, there are these cartoonifications of Thakur Marjhuli stories. They're like, the cartoonification is so terrible that you will love it. Okay, so the neck goes like this, and so I was watching it with my daughter, and my daughter was finding it very funny. And it was in English. It has English subtitles, or possibly it was in English subtitles. So when I saw it, like years later, my wife asked me, did you feel scared by watching? And I said, yes, actually I did. My daughter started laughing that my father is scared of even this. I said, well, no, there is actually a subtext in this story, which of course when I was young, I never realized it, which is really scary. It is that we are never satisfied with who we are. That the real horror of our lives is we cannot be our authentic selves. And so that even after death, we want to be that person. So Shakchunni, that was the hook which made me write this story. And there was another thing that I wanted to highlight, which was the Great Bengal Famine. So the Great Bengal Famine is not well known. There are a lot of people who would know the Holocaust, for instance, but would not know the Great Bengal Famine, which was a man-made famine. It was a man-made famine. It was basically an open-air Holocaust, which was done by Winston Churchill, essentially, amidst the protests of many British people, many British administrators, essentially, first of all, to feed the British soldiers, but also because they were afraid that it would fall to the Japanese forces. So they were trying to do what Stalin had done. So they were the scorched earth policy. So they just didn't want them to have anything to
Resources.
eat. Yes. Yeah. So the army marches on its stomach. So the line would grow longer from Japan. Yes. So they were coming through the Burma theatre.
Yes.
So at that point of time, Calcutta, the Japanese advance lines were bombing Calcutta. So they were kind of softening it up for the invasion. And there were Japanese spies all over. And so it was, if you've seen Bonkesh Bokshe, this was the only movie which I had seen which actually...
Burmese theatre was not really much written about as well for the World War II.
Absolutely.
Of all the books, there are very few.
Yes, it's always focused on Europe.
And
right?
some of the most vicious fighting happened in that theatre.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is based on... it's set amidst, like, there were armies of, and my grandfather told me the story. He was a freedom fighter. My grandfather was in a cellular jail, and he told me these stories of, basically armies of zombies walking the streets of Calcutta. Like, he says that level of malnutrition you cannot imagine. Like, if you don't eat, essentially the stomach gases make you burst out. Like that level of starvation. Fighting for scraps of food with dogs. It was something and people just dropping dead on the street from starvation. There's no food. So that is horrifying, right? So that is the backdrop. And this is a family of zamindars who are actually, they are hoarders of grain, because the price of grain goes up to the price of gold. So they have the rice, but they're not selling it, waiting for it to go up. So this is basically a cursed family. And it's a story of that. It's, again, the horror is, and I don't want to spoil it for those of you who haven't read it, but the horror works at many, many levels. It's not just about the supernatural. It's about the acts people do.
It's a very base level horror then. It's starvation, essentially, you're sort of leapfrogging from.
It is about starvation. It is about conscience. Some of them are suffering from the sheer weight of knowing what they have caused, but unable to change what they have done. It is an immense pangs of conscience at a level that we cannot understand, because there are people who are seeing it, and there are people who are unable, to live their authentic selves.
Yes.
And so there is a lot of blood, a lot of deaths, a lot of strange stuff happening. So, what I can tell you is that there are two brothers who are the princes. Okay. So the elder prince goes to London to become a barrister, which was what every Bengali
aspired to.
Tagore, everybody aspired to be. And so he goes there. comes back broken-hearted, in love with the Duchess. The Duchess has rejected him, and he's like so broken-hearted. The book starts with him trying to commit suicide, and his parents decide that we'll get him married off to someone. We can't get him married off to another Zamindar's daughter because everybody knows that he's, that he's come back, he's not right in the head. Let's get him married to somebody poor, somebody from far away. So they get somebody, they marry someone, a beautiful woman. That's the part of the whole Shakchunni thing. And then people start dying.
So the part that you talked about, the leapfrogging from the Winston Churchill part, people have forgotten about the Bengal famine in a way. It's not spoken about as much because his speech after Dunkirk and all, that is what is sort of reappropriated, and he's sort of this sort of, this symbol of hope now after that. But we forget the sort of the what he did to Bengal. It's so deep in Bengalis that even in your generation, you haven't forgotten about it.
We haven't. I mean, it's what we would say generational trauma. And I'd written a blog post when Churchill won. And I said that, in my opinion, Churchill is no different from Hitler. And if you can make a biopic on Churchill just as you can make a biopic on Hitler, but if you make a biopic on Hitler about him as an artist, and that's it, well, that's disingenuous. So if you want to show Churchill, then you have to show him warts and all, the other things that he did. Now, you can say, well, you can't judge him by the standards of today, which is something which people say. But okay, let's say that. Let's say that, okay, he was part of an imperial structure, colonial structure. It's not Churchill. It's just the way white people saw brown people in those days. So he was like, a product of his times. I get that subtlety. But let's mention that, please, will you? So there has been a problem, even I believe, that while the famine has been extensively covered in Bengali literature, it hasn't kind of made its way across to even India.
Tell me one thing, does it work with you like that if somebody's political views is something that you don't agree with, then you don't want to watch his films, or you see his films from his political angle? Does that work like that with you? Like, see, Mithun Chakraborty.
For me personally, I can absolutely separate the person from the performer in this case. So I understand that he's a performer. That's why they say don't meet your heroes. So I wouldn't want to meet a lot of people because I don't. But even if I accidentally meet that person and that person doesn't turn out to be the kind of person who I thought that person was, at least for me, it won't affect my appreciation of his art or his or her art. And so I'll give you the main example is Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson, in my opinion, is absolutely guilty of the crimes that he's been accused of. I've seen the documentary. At least in my mind, I have no doubt that he's... But do I not listen to Michael Jackson? No, I still do listen to Michael Jackson. And does the thought of who he was not come in my mind? It absolutely does, because of the heinous nature of what he actually did. But it's not that I'll stop listening to, because I also think he's a genius in terms of what he did, in terms of his artistic. So I am able to kind of split the art from the artist, and the rational, and you can say this is rationalization, but the rationalization that I use is I love so many people's work and I have no idea who these people were in real life.
Since you've chronicled so much of popular culture in your columns and in your social media interactions, you read a lot about popular culture. Do you feel that somewhere when artists bring out their political views, it impacts on their art too?
Okay. So any speech that you do will have consequences, right? So the notion of karma is both the action as well as the consequence. It's the same word for both, right? So it's not just a question of movie making. It's like if you make a public statement in any place, you will going to be judged for it, and that's inevitable. Now with a movie star, so there's this movie called Nayak by Satyajit Ray. So it's a great movie. Uttam Kumar was the Nayak. So he plays a Bengali superstar. He basically plays himself. And so what they show is that when he was young, when he was not famous, he was a he was like a Marxist union kind of guy, used to hang out. And so that now they show that he's become famous. So his best friend kind of stops his car and says, can you just come out and like say something to the striking mill workers? And he just wears his glasses, he's sweating, and he says, just leave. Just leave. And he says, come on, no, I can't. I just can't. Don't ask me to. So he's kind of being interviewed, and he says that, you see, people think that once you become famous, you become more powerful. But no, your work is restricted. There's so many things which you can't say because I'm no longer that person that I used to be. So that's basically the story. The story is about a person who was a nice person, a good person, an authentic person. But when he becomes a superstar, he himself realizes that he's too scared to be the person that he was. And so he doesn't live his authentic life. That's his tragedy. He's always afraid of failure. He was never like that. He was a carefree guy who lived life in the moment. And now he's perennially unhappy because he's a superstar. So the thing is that, yes, some stars do speak out. And I'll make the example of Shah Rukh Khan coming to the swearing-in ceremony, right? There was a lot of controversy about him coming, and I don't get that controversy. First of all, he's not coming to a political event. He's not coming to a religious event. He's coming to a constitutional event. So he's invited as, he's invited as one of the most famous Indians alive today. And even any kind of, but is that a political statement? Yeah, nowadays everything is a political statement. So does that impact Shah Rukh Khan in any shape or form? I think he's too powerful to be impacted by these things.
I remember having this talk with you, off and on, off camera, where you said, and you've written about it, also chronicled it, that how publishers didn't give you, columns didn't come your way, publishing didn't come your way because they said, listen, tone down your right wing.
Yes. So that is true. So again, you can express, as I said, you can express your opinions. And I find it ridiculous that I'm considered to be right-wing, given so many of my opinions don't align with either the trads or the raitas. But
Raitas.
But that's unfortunate. But yes, it is. So there is an expectation of ideological purity. And that's especially true for the left wing, and now it is becoming true for the right wing also, because my disappointment is that the right wing is adopting the exact same techniques of the left wing, just on the other side. It is not, so that's why...
In what way? They just cancel you, I guess.
Yes, so what has happened is...
Deplatform you.
Yes, so that is exactly the thing. So, but the true notion of liberalism, and I consider myself a liberal, and I sometimes also scared to say the word liberal because everybody says they're liberal. So I want to distinguish myself. That's why I use the term Gunda liberal to refer to myself. Is that liberalism, the basic tenet of it is, I have certain prejudices of my own, right? As a human being, because of my lived experience. But I do not judge you for having different opinions, because you have had a different life experience. So, okay, you're different. I may choose not to associate with you because I might think that, look, it's just like you like things and we're not alike. That's fine. But to deplatform someone, to deny that person opportunities is not like I will not invite you to my home. You have absolutely the full rights not to invite you to your home. But I am a steward. I am an editor in a publishing house. I don't own the publishing house, but I don't like your opinions. Ergo, I will not work with you. It's basically a call not for you to take.
It's very contrived.
Yes. This is not in your... This is discrimination, right? So what I'm trying to say is that a liberal person will say, you know what, I agree to disagree. But what I see is that the left wing, and that it's related to what Marxist thought is. If you read Marxism, if you read other people interpreting Marxism, it is a religion. It has no scope for grace. So they don't like... Even a person who considers himself liberal doesn't like a person who they believe is supporting, quote-unquote, fascism. It's a line which I love to use. It is not fascist to be fascist to a fascist. Okay.
Oh.
So if you say that, and I get to choose who is the fascist, is the in brackets. So it just says, no, well, this is what fascists do. I'm not a fascist, but I will do the exact same thing to you because you're a fascist. obviously there are many circular things that are wrong with this, but this is something that's used now, unfortunately, both by the left wing, and the left wing uses the word fascist, the right wing uses some other word. They don't use the word fascist, they'll use some other word, commie, something else. But the instruments they use, the rhetorical devices they use are identical. You could just you could search, replace them, and you would find the exact same thing. So that is where a liberal or a centrist is different. A liberal centrist sticks to some consistent set of principles.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter who's saying it, and they're always open to other ideas with as minimal judgment as possible. I'm not saying it's impossible for me not to judge you, but at least I will try to be objective. This was the whole Greek philosophical tradition of Socrates and Plato. Everything is a debate. It's basically a Twitter battle going on with them, right? But they're not going down and saying, you have taken money from Rahul Gandhi, you have taken money from Modi. Nobody says that, right? You have taken money from Pericles. Nobody says that. It is very spirited debate, and they don't converge on an ideal almost ever.
Yeah.
It's not like, I bow down to your logic and I accept it. Nobody ever says that, and opinions will not change, right? But it is to give people the right to say something without being attacked for it, without being denied opportunities for it, without being shamed for it. Of course, the left wing will say, well, fascists deserve to be shamed. But that is the thing. Even the right wing can say that to you, right? It's just who has the upper hand. Now, you talked about publishing. The thing is that publishing, it has a huge left-wing bias. The left-wing guy has the left-wing guy who reads the left-wing books, who publishes the left-wing author. So everybody is left-wing. So a right-wing, anybody who is not left-wing, it's not a question of, again, it's a question of the Overton window. You shift it, and everybody who is not extreme left seems to be right of you. True.
Is this only in India? You live in America. It's there even in the US, you would see?
So, US is... So if you want... So again, I have not worked with US publishers, but this is just an amazing movie called American Fiction, which was about the American publishing industry, and exactly this, which was basically an anti-woke statement on what publishing has become. It was Oscar nominated. It's actually based on a very old book, which was written in early 2000s. It kind of predates all of this, but it was very popular this year. It's insanely funny. I recommend all of you to watch it. It's American Fiction.
So essentially, you're saying, just distilling down everything that you've said, maybe what we are lacking is true centrism in our country, wherein if someone is presented with an argument, facts, they are unable to sort of change their opinion, and those who do change their opinion, they are too sort of malleable, I guess. So it's difficult to put them in any box. So these guys are basically without a home.
So again, I'm not... So in my opinion, I don't think you can change anyone's opinion. Because I don't think our opinions are inherently formed by ourselves. We can pretend to change our opinion just to get out of a conversation or because the boss wants this, but we don't change our opinions. I don't think that I'm in the business of changing anyone's opinion. What I would like to do, unless I'm writing movie reviews, but what I would like, again, the whole notion of the Gunda liberal is that...
flesh that out a bit.
Yes. Okay. So for those of you who don't know, there was a movie called Gunda which came out in 1999 or 98. I've forgotten. I shouldn't have. But which was directed by Kanti Shah, and which has become, it was released. There was very little buzz about it. It was one of Mithun Chakraborty's Ooty movies, which were produced every week. And it died without...
what do you mean every week?
Almost every week he would have a new release. He would shoot like 3 or 4 movies, apparently, that was legend, like side by side, all in his hotel. So, for instance, in Gunda, there is a scene in which one person dies and he runs into a restroom which has ladies written and gents written on it. Like, which house has... So this is all apparently shot in Mithun's Ooty properties. But, so this was a great move. I discovered it many years later. And I was just blown away by, especially the first 45 minutes of Gunda. It's like an explosion. So with Mithun Chakraborty, the Gunda is of course so bad that it's good. but it is not just, there are many so bad it's good movies, but Gunda, the dialogues are sometimes in rhyme. It rhymes, and it is actual total street language. So according to legend, again I don't have any validation, it was written by a guy called Bashir Babbar. He's written very few movies and he died actually. So Bashir Babbar was like that was his style, like street shairi with like gali galoj. You can say rap music kind of, but it is like they talk in that kind of style, but it is so beautiful.
That kind of stuff.
Exactly. So मेरा नाम है पोते जो अपने बाप के भी नहीं होते. So it is so just one after another.
It's so bad that it's good.
But that impression in the late 90s, mid 90s, that was a theme that everyone sort of, cookie cutter sort of.
It was, but Gunda takes it like, it amps it up to 11.
Achha.
So it takes all the standard tropes of, and the brilliance of it is not somebody who is doing it intentionally. It is like the equivalent of like 1,000 monkeys bashing away a typewriter and out comes Shakespeare. Okay, so it's that. It's not that they're aware. I don't like self-aware spoof movies where they're trying so hard to be funny. No, these guys are not trying to be funny at all. They're trying to be very serious.
Yes.
They're saying, let this dialogue, how can we make it even more punchy? Let's amp it up. And they amp it up to a level which is so ridiculous that you will die laughing.
Yeah.
But so Gunda kind of then
Like
became
David Dhawan films.
No, it is not David Dhawan
That's
movies.
another genre altogether.
David Dhawan movies are intentionally like that. So, for instance, when David Dhawan, there is this line which says, "ये आपके होने वाले पति के हो चुके बच्चे." Okay. So you see,
Before a movie, वो टोपी में भी आता था. Action. He used to start.
Kadir Khan and
Yes,
Govinda.
Kadir Khan, yeah.
But see, they were funny. For
Yeah,
to be
they were
funny.
funny.
they were
These
funny.
guys
They
took
were
them-
intentionally written to be funny,
Yeah,
right?
These guys took them so seriously.
Yeah.
But it became funny.
How were you a fan of Mithun Chakraborty of that era? That white pants, pointy white shoes. And
So that was so I grew up in a very, like most Bengali middle class kids, I grew up in a household and in a community where you were only supposed to listen to Rabindra Sangeet. Okay. Everything else was Aposhanskriti. Aposhanskriti means bad culture.
Yeah.
In Bengal, bad culture is like the worst thing that it is the worst thing you can do, right? In liberal Bengali families, a lot of things are allowed, but the only thing that's not allowed is Aposhanskriti, which is bad culture. And so my love of bad culture was basically my rebellion. So what I used to do was, we used to stay in this place where my father they have these, old recorders, and there was always Shantidev Ghosh, Rabindra Sangeet, day in, day out. And so my only respite, and the problem is, and I'll be very honest, is that when you're like 6 or 7 years old, you don't understand the philosophical underpinnings of what Rabindranath Tagore is saying about bhakti and God and love.
True.
You understand that after you're old. So when you're 6 or 7, what is this even saying? What does this even mean? And why do all the songs sound the same? On the other hand, there was this loudspeaker which was playing "I Am a Disco Dancer." Okay. Dun, 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 dun. And that tune was so catchy. And then the guy goes, "D se hota hai dance," and it's like "I se hota hai item," and that is so much better than what is this guy saying? I'm going to listen to it. So I used to go to the extremity of my veranda and like perk my ears and try to catch the lyrics. And I didn't know Hindi very well, so I didn't get everything. So I kind of made up some stuff. And the first cassette I actually had when my parents allowed me Hindi movies was Qyamat Se Qyamat Tak. That was the first series I had, and that was the first time that I was. My father then realized that my son was like, he was not going down the traditional path, and it was okay. According to my father, as long as your studies don't suffer. So
he was okay with you.
He was okay with me. He was okay with me indulging a little bit on the wild side. Wild side meant
listening to QSQT and
listening to QSQT.
Gunda and
Gunda. He had no idea. Gunda actually, I didn't see Gunda when it was released. I saw Gunda when I was in the US doing my PhD. So there was an Orkut group in those days. There was a social media.
Orkut, oh my God.
Where somebody said, "Have you seen this movie called Gunda?" So my wife was coming to Delhi. So she's a Delhiite. So I told her, "Can you get a VCD from Palika Bazaar? Okay, called Gunda." So my wife got these 2 VCDs of Gunda and Loha. And the guy who was selling it to her said, "Madam, do you really want this?" My wife was like in her early 20s in this days, going and asking for that. They were like, "Do you know what's in it?" I said, "Yeah." And so she bought it, and I saw it as like, my mind was absolutely blown.
You were not offended like a cultured Bengali by the vulgarity and the crudeness of that film?
So my entire thing is my rebellion against Bengali culture, my rebellion against everything Bengali was my love of Hindi. Was my love of, I can't speak Hindi very well, but Hindi trashy movies of the 90s, it just appeals to a different part of my brain. I used to love Govinda movies. One of my favorite Govinda movies is Raja Babu. See, Raja Babu is like, it's obviously not a movie that like, it's for those of you who have seen Raja Babu.
You grew up on
Pakka Chikka Pak, of course I did.
Oh God. Who is Karishma Kapoor, no? Raja Babu?
It's Karishma Kapoor and the main guy is Nandu Tumhara Bandhu, which is Shakti Kapoor. And his standard gag is like everything is Nara drops at any point of time. So when at the beat of the song, tuck, and his Nara drops.
And Kader Khan's amazing delivery of dialogues and everything.
Kader Khan had an amazing dialogue delivery.
Yeah.
And so
he had that slight 30 seconds.
The cadence to his delivery was fantastic.
And it's like it comes in, it comes in.
Bolchal wali jo hoti
hai. It doesn't look that,
Like
okay,
rehearsed
camera
it.
angle fix kiya hai, so I should face it, and it just comes very naturally. And he doesn't have a good side or bad side to it.
I think mid-90s, early 90s, the 90s period, that cinema was
gross,
amazing.
But it was quite gross. Achha, tell me, when you like these kind of things, like I know of so many Bengali friends of mine, so when they have their dinners and when they have their parties and all that, it's a lot of culture which you were rebelling against. What happens in your family outlook? You've done a PhD, you're doing well in life, and then you write about Gunda. You're talking about Gunda in your social media. Do your friends and all turn around and say कि क्या यार तुम श्याम बेनेगल के बारे में क्यों नहीं लिखते, सत्यजीत रे के बारे में क्यों नहीं लिखते?
No, they don't. But sometimes what happens is that some of my pronouncements or some of my tweets are so out there. It's not so much my friends. It's that nowadays I have a daughter, and you have to be friends with the parents of their daughters, right? So and I try avoiding adding them on Facebook for no other reason that I don't want them to see what I might post about, right? So
profile with Rahul
yes,
Roy.
because I don't want my
What?
No, I'm just joking. I'm saying,
What?
I mean, like, they come in and see your profile pictures, Rahul Roy's picture, merging into a tiger.
Yes,
Oh
so-
God, that film, which was that?
Junoon.
No.
No, Junoon. It's called.
It's a second
वो werewolf
Junoon.
होता है उसमें.
No. Junoon. There are 2 Junoons.
2 Junoons, yeah.
One is the Shashi
Shashi
Kapoor
Kapoor and-
pigeons flying Ruskin Bond one. This is the bad Junoon. This is where Rahul Roy transforms into
i.e. the good Junoon.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
But that is Tom Alter.
Yeah.
And so the one that I'm talking about. So when
That is the rebellion, British era rebellion and all.
Yeah, yeah.
That Junoon.
That's what I-
Nafiza Ali's.
That's what I'd said when that leopard or whatever was spotted during the swearing in. It's the other Rahul transforming into
Rahul Roy.
Oh, okay. Okay, now I get the whole
Full moon होता है and he
metaphor.
transformed into a werewolf. It's fantastic.
it's like
Yeah.
a leopard. It's not a werewolf. He
So,
transforms into
Rahul Roy I had forgotten about his movies till he met with an accident or something happened to him and he had that illness. And then suddenly you started writing about Rahul Roy, tweeting about him. And then I realized, oh yeah, we had forgotten about him completely.
So that is the thing that I'm sometimes
With
afraid
Pooja
of.
Bhatt and
Yes,
all he
yes.
acted
Yeah,
those
exactly.
movies.
I'm
Absolutely
afraid of
correct,
being
yes.
judged, not just by Bengalis, but like Americans, right? Because Americans, everybody is very polite. I mean, nowadays, and this is very true if you're in America, there's very restricted topics that you can talk about without being judged, offended, cancelled. And especially this is true since I stay in LA. You have to be very careful because it's your daughter. You don't want your daughter to be bullied. You don't want to lose her to lose a friend. I'm perfectly fine if you don't like me. Okay, fine. I don't like you either. But my daughter, we have to be careful. So sometimes I have to be careful. Should I? So that is one of the reasons why I can't write a sequel to Mihab, because I wrote it when I was not a dad. I didn't think that I was going to be a dad, so I did never. Nowadays, I have to think, okay, should I say this? Maybe I shouldn't say this. So I have so many videos, so many pictures that I have that I don't tweet, and I would have absolutely tweeted before.
But LA, you talk about LA. Both of you have lived in the East Coast. Tell me about the difference in this woke culture of the West Coast as compared to the East Coast. East Coast, I think, like you both studied in the US. The wokeism that you see on campuses now, is it the same that what you experienced and what you experienced?
I mean, when I studied in Washington, D.C., I think anyway people were a bit cagey in Washington, D.C. to completely, because it's such a political city as it was. But obviously, it was nowhere as bad as what we've been seeing in the last 3, 4, 5 years, that certain topics are absolute no-go areas where you just don't bring that up, because then you'll be labeled as you said, a fascist or an anarchist, a Bolshevik, whatever. I mean, we used to attend. So I studied in GW back in the day. I mean, which had a very competitive international affairs program, and they would have discussions on Israel, Hamas, the PLO, the entire history of the Middle East, and you would have students from both sides of the debate, and you had a lot of Middle Eastern students as well who had very strong opinions. They had it. You had a lot of Jewish students as well, because this is classic East Coast college. It's a huge Jewish population. Some of the biggest endowments in those colleges are from Jewish entrepreneurs in the area. So they fostered a situation where healthy debate could happen, and students felt safe. They didn't feel that there would be sort of, chants that called for the extermination of one race or stuff like that was marching around in campuses. And there weren't any sit-ins. The only sit-in that happened later on was Occupy Wall Street. That was just it was retaliation towards the excesses of Wall Street in 2008. But apart from that, when it came to sort of academic issues as well as foreign policy issues, life didn't stand still. It continued, at least in 2008, 2007, around that time. But now, sort of the way, I guess this was also just before the advent of Facebook, and then before Twitter for sure. So the town square, one didn't get stoned as you are now to have an opinion that was a bit contrary to what other people did, but people heard you out, man, and they didn't think that you shouldn't exist. That feeling was not there. People were allowed to flesh out arguments. Now what we are seeing is something which is way more sinister in it, where it's sort of institutionalized across various platforms. And you see your neighbors essentially turning against you, and that I feel, at least that's the change that I have seen.
You did your PhD around about the same time. That's the time that I met you also at that time.
No, it was a little bit after that. I was staying in DC. I was working. PhD was a long time ago.
Okay. So at that time, and then you made the shift. I remember reading about when you moved from the East Coast to the West Coast. You were a little apprehensive at that time also about moving from one coast to the other, because it wasn't just a geographical location. It's also
price. That's the biggest thing. That's why you were scared. But this thing is that I will actually trace this to the rise of Trump. So what happened was, and again, this is my theory. So you're right. There was a time in which an university was deemed to be a place where more extreme opinions were tolerated. So there was kind of a carte blanche that, if you were in university, you were going to be exposed to. There used to be campus comedy was something a different beast than a comedy in somewhere else. There were certain places where you could indulge or you could talk without being judged. One was an university, and there was, let's say, a comedy club. Because if you went to a comedy club, you were basically signing over your rights to be offended. I'm not telling it to you. You're coming to a comedy club, right? So I could say whatever I want. There was insult comics, there was whatever. And so nothing was off limits there. And that was one of the things which I loved about America, actually, because when you go from India, where you can't say this to this one, you can't say this to that person, just the ability for somebody to say whatever they wanted in certain places. Like, you can't go to the office and say everything. So there were certain places that were designated like smoking zones in an airport. What has happened is, then Trump came, and so the left wing, which has always been there, basically said that the reason why Trump came was because we have allowed this kind of speech for so long. So the rise of Trump is a call for, and this is a very common term that the Soviets used to use, re-education. So when they used to send them to Siberia, they didn't say, we're sending you to die. They said, we're sending you for re-education.
Yes.
There's a certain term for it. So the left-wing thing is like, you are being re-educated. So what the re-education led to was that campuses had to be safe places. For what safe places meant that you cannot say anything which might be construed to be fascist, or which, and again, we get to choose what that is, of course. And so the same thing happened in comedy clubs. There's so many comics, even people like Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Jerry Seinfeld is a very down the center, old world liberal guy. He is not a risque guy by any shot. Nobody would ever call him. He says, I can't play college campuses anymore. Bill Maher said that for a long time.
Yeah.
So even college campuses, comedy clubs, they are out. And
Bill Maher continues to say that. You know, he continues to say that the cancel culture which came in as a result of wokeism. Even now, I've seen some of his shows when he talks about it, there isn't applause from the audiences, that he speaks to, and he says, well, and then there's a enforced Twitter and just laugh a little bit just for being polite because you've come to his show. But he's still fighting it. I've seen that he's one of the few who's fighting it.
And the thing is, again, it comes to echo chambers, and so there is a commercial aspect to it also. So if you watch late night comedy in the US, so Stephen Colbert, for instance,
only laugh about Trump and that's it.
Yes. So Stephen Colbert, the reason is that Stephen Colbert and everybody in that demographic are targeting an audience which just wants. And so the hypocrisy is this, that if comedy is about making fun of the establishment, Trump isn't the establishment anymore. Establishment in Joe Biden, right? So why are the jokes still about Trump?
Yeah.
When he's not been the establishment for a long time. So all that thing that, comedians are anti-establishment, it's not democratic Republican, is all BS. The reason why they do it is because they have a certain demographic that they want to cater to. And that demographic tunes in or watches them on YouTube because they want their biases to be confirmed. They want to laugh at their opposition. The thing is that laughter is the strongest weapon.
And
right?
the ads also and the awards also will go only to John Oliver.
Yeah, you guys are basically saying it's an echo chamber.
Yeah, John Oliver,
all
Stephen
these are
Colbert,
elements of an echo chamber.
Jimmy Kimmel.
There is only one person, I would say,
Who's a breakout?
who still kind of maintains some level of honesty, is Jon Stewart.
Bill Maher continues to be my favorite because he calls out the BS from both sides.
Yes, he is called out, and again, he's now considered also now to be right-wing, which is strange because he was an extreme
because
left-wing.
of the Israel-Hamas
Yeah,
thing.
because he was an extreme left-wing guy, even though his show was originally cancelled because, if you remember, when he had a network TV show, it was cancelled because after 9/11, he said that the people who ran their planes into the World Trade Center were not cowards. You can't call them cowards. You can call them whatever you want, but they were not cowards. He immediately lost his job. And he had to go to HBO, which again is HBO is, I don't think HBO would have accommodated him today. But in those days, HBO was a place where people could, HBO is a different kind of television channel. You can swear, you can do whatever you want. So he went there and he's been on HBO, I don't know, for 20 years now after that. But there is a great episode, that was what I was saying about Stephen Colbert and Jim and Stewart. So Stewart comes there and they're talking about the Wuhan lab leak. Okay. So one of the things that you would not call the COVID thing to be a lab leak on television.
Oh, yeah.
And Stewart basically says, why not? This seems to be logical. And you can just see Stephen Colbert's face. Stephen Colbert is like, don't go there. And Stewart just doesn't stop. Colbert is, of course, Stewart used to be his boss.
He's his guru, yeah.
He's his boss. He used to be his boss, a guru. But Stewart is laser focused on saying what he wants. So the only person I believe who does not pander is Stewart. Stewart might have, and Stewart has repeatedly, so I follow Stewart. He's my favorite now. Is that he's consistently maintained what I would say a center. I don't agree with him on everything, but I understand that he's consistent on many things. And
you don't think that happened with, talk about the Indian, let's talk about Hasan Minhaj.
Before we do that, see, in the left, it's very apparent because there's so many such faces. I want you to sort of shine some more light on known faces on these networks, say on sort of the right one, like Fox News, Tucker Carlson leaving, heading out on his own, sort of, and getting a tremendous success. Similarly, over here also, you have anchors and editors who have sort of left their networks and started their own YouTube channels. They're also getting a lot of success. Now, some may say that they are pandering towards a certain audience that likes their content, and that's why they're getting the numbers, because that audience is large. But then there are people who are sort of striking a balance that they couldn't have in their networks when they were working sort of in the corporate media, as people like to put it. So that we will be seeing more of this now heading forward, both in America and India.
Yes. So the future is YouTube, because it is the relationship is increasingly going to become. So people used to tune in to CBS, NBC, here maybe Z or whatever. They're going to now migrate to individuals. So ultimately, when it comes to elections, this is something which I've said many times. People don't vote on this guy made the mandir, I'll vote for him. No. Voting is an emotional decision based on your identification with a certain person. Or, so there are different kinds of, so there is an adrenaline-driven voting, which is fear-driven voting. There is a dopamine-driven voting, and there is serotonin-driven voting. Okay. So, what the second is that there is a level of comfort with that person. Even though you don't know who the guy is, but you feel he's fatherly, or I trust him, I might not agree with him, but, and then there is this person belongs to my community. I feel that person's achievement. It's like, I feel proud when Virat Kohli scores a century, right? Who is Virat Kohli to me? It is just, he represents me in a way. Like if I deconstruct, I'll say, how does he represent me in any way? I mean, but somehow I feel that emotion. So again, if you deconstruct the emotions, it kind of, but when you vote, you suddenly cheer, you start clapping, right? Because it hits you. So people vote for these things, and also people consume content for precisely the same things. Again, it is the fact that you trust me. How does that trust established? It is established because I confirm your biases pretty regularly. So people sometimes tell me, so I'll say that's true for me too. People who like me, I possibly confirm their biases. They say, there's some things which, and this especially for Mihi app or some of the 90s writings. So I'm saying this in a non-political context. So they said, we've had the same experiences as you did, but first of all, I thought I was the only person having that experience. So as an example, what used to happen was that there was a channel called TV9, which used to, TV5 or TV9, which used to was a Russian channel, which used to come on cable TV. And at 2 o'clock at night, it would show Playboy channel.
Not the TV9 in India.
Not the TV9. It was a TV5 or Mokba. Okay. It was called Mokba, Mockba. It was a Russian channel. And it would show Playboy TV. By the way, there's no internet, so you can't tell anyone. Nowadays, people would go on Reddit and say it. So people at different times, usually while programming late at night their Java assignments, switched on the TV and independently found out, my God, what is going on in television, right? At 2 o'clock at night. So I'd written about that in Mihi app. And so many people said, I thought I was the only guy who knew that. And just somebody writing about that in such a humorous way. I feel that I am represented in your book. So representation. So they are representing my opinion but in a much better way than I could have. So I say, this is why I feel that. Or, so that is what builds the trust in you.
This is what happened with Fox, I think. The sudden rise of Fox was this resentment towards what
Establishment was at that time.
what NBC, ABC, CBS, their news bulletins were. It was
And demonizing the Clintons.
and so that I guess.
So let me tell you something which is a controversial thing. Okay. So it will take me some time to explain. So I'll try to explain briefly, but I'm kind of giving away some of the stuff that I want to put in my next book.
Chalo, clip cutters on Twitter.
But
Sun lo ab.
yes. So one of the alarming things that I've seen in the US, which is alarming to me, and I'll first say what the alarming thing is, and then I'll explain why it has happened and why I'm afraid about it being replicated, is that as we have Russia and Putin, there's a significant population of the Americans who support Russia against their own country. These are the extreme flag-waving Americans. So there's a huge contradiction in terms, right? Why are these ultra-conservative, patriotic, America first, Tucker Carlson watching, Trump voting guys supporting the enemy who they are fighting a war? Like in USSR times, this would be inconceivable in a Rambo, somebody supporting the Russian boxer.
Yeah.
Why has this happened? Because what I believe has happened is that a nation or a community, so let's say you have two people, let's think of there is no society, there is nothing. I am a guy walking with a spear and a deer that I have hunted. Okay, I'm walking on this tundra. And I see another guy coming on the other side with a spear and with a deer. So what am I going to do? One thing is I can throw my spear and kill him, right? Because I don't know if he will throw his spear and kill me, because I have something he wants, he has something I want. Or I can hesitate, of course, and I'll take my chance and say, I don't want to kill the guy, I'll just walk past. But the safe option is to kill the guy, right? That is why society. And so the problem with that is you kill the guy, but you'll very soon come across a guy who's going to fire first and he's going to kill you, right? So you're going to have a very short, brutal, nasty life. So society was evolved by creating a certain shared moral code that you and I share, which doesn't take away the risk that you still will not kill me, but lessens the chance that you will kill me, because we share some kind of values. So religion was one thing. So there was tribal affiliation. So if I saw your colors, I would know that you are part of my tribe. If it's an enemy, shoot first. So this is how society grew. And by natural selection, all the people that are alive today are inherited from ancestors who had that sense, right? So we presume, so our notion of a religion community is because of a set of shared values and some presumptions that we have. Now, we cannot articulate what those presumptions are. So let's take the case of America. Okay. So in America, there are certain presumptions. And I can say this safely because I'm an immigrant in America. If I was a white guy, I wouldn't be able to say what I'm saying right now. So I'm an immigrant in America. So I'm saying that, but I understand why doesn't happen in California, but so I remember when I was a student, we were friends, we went to a very remote place in Washington State. We were going to Oregon and Washington State. So we stopped at a place which was an absolutely rural white area, where when we walked in, they just kind of looked at us like we were not human beings. Like we were suddenly, a lion walks in, right? And you could see like some of these guys take this stance. Some of these guys shrink away, and so this was something that we had never encountered in the US, because I don't think there's a place where people are not used to seeing Indians. We felt scared. I'm pretty sure they felt scared too. Now, the thing is I can say they were racists. Right? They were racist, right? No, wait, hold on. That's a moral judgment which I'm passing on them. They see something which is very strange. They see that other guy on the tundra. That is what the genetic memory is kicking in, right? They share no moral, so they're looking at the color of skin, that's one way of doing it, but they feel that there's nothing that connects us, and they get into the fight thing, right? So what has happened in the US is that they have, through what is loosely known as wokeism, they have made any kind of discomfort with something that is not American as fundamentally bad, right? So let's say you cannot say, like, say, white representation. That is inherently racist. But you can say black representation, you can say Hispanic representation, you can say all other things, right? If you say white lives matter, that is actually a racist thing. So you can say that you shouldn't say it, it's racist. But, it stay inside me. It's my genetic memory triggering here. Now, when Putin does the exact, like, Putin is my ideal. It's a predominantly of what America used to be. Even though I am in America, I feel that is my community, not this. The people I see, the taco stands, like the McDonald's. So I'm in a community and a neighborhood thing. So the place where I stay, it's increasingly Hispanic and Desi population there. And so many of the older classic American diners are being replaced by taco stands and Indian restaurants and Indian groceries. And I can see some of the comments there from white people. Okay. Now, a part of me feels threatened because, it's my culture, but I understand. That is the Gunda liberal part. The Gunda liberal says, okay, no, wait, let me try to understand from this guy who might hate me, but why does this guy hate me? Let's see if I can come to a common ground. And I understand that his definition of what his community used to be, that he would drive out for 40 years, see this diner where his dad used to take him, now being replaced by a taco stand or by Taj Palace Hotel or a Taj Palace restaurant serving tandoori chicken in the afternoon, right? It's his country. He says, this is my country. I haven't left it. Now, you will say, well, it's my country too. I'm in America. Just because I'm brown doesn't mean it's not my country. Yeah. I get it. But for that guy, his definition of the moral code is defined by steakhouse, whiteness, beer, and they're gradually being, not just they're going away, but the fact that you feel uncomfortable is because you're the bad guy.
He would think it's an insurgency.
Yes. So that is why he says, so this is why Trump is winning. You see, Trump taps into that. Trump is smart.
Is he winning?
Yes, he's winning. As of today, he's winning, in my opinion. There is no doubt in my mind. He's winning.
He's very popular. Let's see, the debates will happen soon.
Debate doesn't matter. The fact is, in my opinion, the worst thing they did was this trial that they put him through. So
this hush money trial.
This hush money trial was, so you see.
And the DA is a Democrat. So these are politically affiliated.
So for the DA, this makes sense because the DA ran on this. This is going to make the DA's career. So from the DA's perspective, the DA is super successful.
But that's ridiculous to make a judgment because it's going to make your career.
No. The DA is not the judge, right? So the DA is like
the prosecutor.
The prosecutor, right? So the prosecutor wants prominence, right? Now everybody knows his name, right? If you remember that Giuliani, for instance, we made his name on the mob, by being a prosecutor against the mob, right? That is what made him. So in the US also, RFK was a prosecutor. So a district attorney, prosecutor is a stepping stone.
But she's right about the judge as well. Wasn't that a Democrat appointment as well? No, I said
it was a Democrat appointment, but so it is true that the judge, but it was a jury trial. So there is some level of neutrality.
Centrism.
Some level of yes. But the point is the fact that politically, if the government, if Joe Biden wanted to shut that down, he could have, right? Because what he was convicted on is very minor thing. The main thing isn't that he is the business expense. They just want to make sure that he's humiliated. They grind away at the fact that he paid money to a porn star. The whole thing is that they want, and this is where I think, so again, if I might quote Mithun Chakraborty, there's the purported line from Mithun Chakraborty movie which says, "Dushman ke लाशों पे भंगड़ा करने वाले कभी लंगड़ा नहीं होते."
अच्छा.
So it is
fantastic.
Yes. So it is like you have to dance on your opponent's grave, literally, and that's the only way that you stay not langra or not you stay safe. So what they're trying to do is the strategy is that you keep Trump occupied in different cases and you bleed him dry, right? So this is the where I have a problem. They realize that they can't beat Trump in an election. Okay. So the way to beat Trump is that Trump is of course he's a crook. There's no doubt in my mind that he's a crook. He deserves to be, but rather than face him in the elections, they just want to keep him tied up with one indictment after another. And the money.
Are you finding a striking similarities to the Indian election?
Indian election.
So
this whole thing about Dushman, how do you see that, what the RSS chief said, and I want to come to you also. How do you both see this, that don't see your opponent, Pratipaksh hona chahiye, Vipaksh nahi, what Mohan Bhagwat said, and don't see your opponent as a Dushman, don't see him as a villain, is what the RSS is saying, and that's being talked about a lot. You were talking about dancing on the grave of your Dushman.
He was quoting Mithun talking about that.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, what I'm trying to say is, do you see that
about Bhagwatji's comment?
Yeah.
I do think that had BJP's tally been close to what the exit poll said, I don't think his speech would have been the way it was. I think now that the BJP is in a coalition government, has formed a coalition government, I think a lot of people will say things that, yeah, I told you so. Essentially, that's the sentiment that one can. It seems this way. I mean, if that was the case, why didn't the RSS talk about sort of Maryada in political campaigning in the middle of the political campaign? Say it then.
But then you'll impact on the results.
So, but then that means you are calibrating your speeches and your sentiments according to the election schedule, or should it be, if you see something is not right in your opinion, speak about it now. To speak about it after the results, it's a good sentiment. It should happen in democracies. I mean, there should be a line that one shouldn't cross. Should have been said at that time.
Do you think that, like, I don't know, I mean, was he talking only to the BJP, or was he talking to the opposition also, that you're taking your opponent too literally as a dushman? That, is he talking to even them? That it's become so vicious and divisive.
Everywhere, huh?
Yeah.
Everywhere. In America, so there's a politician called Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So Marjorie, so if you think...
Super right.
Yeah, so if you think that Trump is... This person is to the right of Trump. Great Trump fan. That person's main shtick. And it's so obvious what the shtick is.
Yeah.
So, see, this thing didn't happen before because there was no social media. And there was no so she says the most outrageous thing intentionally to get social media buzz. And it's almost like a Gunda of politicians.
Yeah.
It's so bad, it's good. Even her biggest fans don't take what she's saying seriously. But this is the way to give it to the liberals. Yeah, take that. We love it. And she knows that, right? So she's a performance artist. So that's what. And they have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on the other side also as a performance artist. So there are many performance artists who are essentially there, not because they want to get bills passed. And this is something which somebody like Nancy Pelosi herself alluded to. So Nancy Pelosi is an old world, let's get things done. We don't hate the person. We can always compromise. So they have this
that's what Rahul Gandhi was
John
Mohabbat
McCain.
Ki Dukaan and all that.
Yeah, that's what BS stuff. But, the Congress is the last party we should talk about Mohabbat Ki Dukaan.
Why do you say that? I mean, now there are newspaper articles that he's no longer a pappu also, and he's the one that I was referring to you, the Times of India article, that this...
No, that I agree. He's no longer, I think his image
has been shattered. Yeah.
His image, I think Rahul Gandhi, and I'd said this at that point of time where again I was called Congress. And I said that Bharatiya Yatra, great success. I didn't know it would bring him seats, but as part of the rehabilitation of his image, it was an amazing PR exercise. Excellently executed. So just think of what a good PR exercise is. What is he tapping into when he's walking? Who walked the length of the country? Mahatma Gandhi, right? So in this country, Mahatma Gandhi was also a genius when it comes to gestures. Goes pick salt, brings down the empire. So walking, that when you walk, you are vulnerable, right? So what is the image he's trying to walk against? That he's a prince. So they call him Shahzada and stuff. So the entire thing is he's a prince and he's not that intelligent either, right? So he can't do things by himself. this is the image that he's suffered. And so if I was like doing a image makeover, I'd say you need to do something which is opposite of this. So first is you need to walk. So when you walk, you're doing two things. First of all, you're showing you're physically fit. Okay. So we have different levels of, this is again our way of perceiving people, right? Somebody is good looking is because they're handsome, right? They look fit, right? So he looks fit. He looks ready to lead when he's walking. And again, these are all subtle plays. People don't understand that. So he's walking for days on end, just like Gandhiji used to do. He is vulnerable. He's not walking with security. He's not walking with courtiers. He's talking to people. He's doing this. Maybe he's saying nothing. Who cares? But the visuals of this guy who's with nothing, not dressed that great, just the fact that this guy is doing this and he can maintain, he's on message, he's not saying anything which is crazy or kooky or something, and he's saying all these nice things. It was a huge victory for Congress. I mean, it was brilliantly done. And I think one of the things that BJP has failed on is they've failed consistently on messaging in the last few years. Now, it's difficult when you're the ruling party. So that is the anti-incumbency effect. When you're an opponent, it's always easy to message. It's much more difficult to defend than it is. So you're always working against something, right? But I would have expected that they would have come up with something better, some of the speeches that I believe that were given. So as an example, when Narendra Modi did that Ghuspetiya speech. So there are two things which I think they got wrong desperately. And you might think these were small things, but that thing about meat eating, that took out Bengal for them. In Bengal, and I've said so many people who have told me, educated people, that when BJP comes to power, they'll stop making us eat meat. Okay. So strictures against meat eating, where in Bengal, Hindus, like everyone eats meat. To kind of say that eating meat is not a good thing, that thing, in my opinion, the 4% that shifts, that was a factor. And I don't think he needed to say it. Again, there's some things you need to say. I think that Ghuspetiya thing also was what I would have advised him was, what you should say is Rahul Gandhi and Congress is trying to divide Hindus against each other by saying this portion, this money from this guy goes to this guy, this portion of money goes to this guy. We are for Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. So hit on your main thing, the one that got you in. We will give it to everybody. We are doing Sabka Vikas. These guys are going back to their old vote bank politics. And that, I think, would have resonated much more. So for me, those were the big communication missteps.
So we saw all these changes happening in India. You were sitting in America. What do expat Indians, were you seeing a tremor in how expat Indians viewed Modi and how expat Indians viewed Rahul Gandhi during these elections?
So again, I wouldn't say that. I don't think that expat Indians look at things differently with social media. I don't think they think they're sitting outside India. But I think that many people that I know of, many people who are outside India, because they're my friends, but I don't know if outside India is the reason why they think that way. But that, they were like, okay, we like Modi, but he didn't need to say this. Like, that was, I think, where, in my opinion, was a communication. I am perfectly fine with when there is some upside to it. But I don't think there was a significant upside to saying this. There was only a downside. I'm not thinking in terms of moral terms at all. Just thinking purely cold-minded political strategy.
Yeah, we have to, once the Bengal, when analysis is done about how they lost Bengal, I guess these things will come up.
If you brought up Bengal, I think one of the big problems with Bengal that BJP has continuously faced is that Mamata Banerjee's personal brand is untouchable in Bengal, especially among women, with direct cash transfers and her this whole thing of she being a woman, only woman chief minister, being like surrounded by like men coming to kind of take her down. Yeah. This resonates. So it's again,
compassion is there.
Again, Mamata Banerjee she provides a lot of meme material. But what comes across Mamata Banerjee is there is a kind of extempore, this person is like, just like us, just randomly talking in front of the mic, right? She's like us. And so rural women associate with her, right? And the thing is, if you need to throw her off her game, You need to have somebody who is. So what is BJP's biggest strength? It's Modi. It's the character of Modi, right? So it's a person. It used to be Indira Gandhi. Indira was India. It was the person, right? So it's ultimately a person. So BJP has been unable in Bengal to come up with a Bengali anti-Mamata who is as you can emotionally connect with that person as much. Shubhendu Adhikari is not that person. Okay, Shubhendu Adhikari is a local, in Nandigram. He was the guy who spearheaded. Local strongman.
Yeah.
He only has a very limited support base in one constituency, which he can hold.
Yes.
Outside, and Bengal has one unique thing, which maybe no other state has. It has a very powerful Buddhijibi influencer thing.
Indian election throws up and makes you rethink on a number of preset notions
Yes.
that you may have about politics and about society.
Yes.
It just makes you rethink and recalibrate your opinions, I feel. I at least think it's a learning experience with every election.
I think at least for five years, EVMs can be put to rest.
No, they will say that if you want...
Maybe
it's
not 5 years, 3 months.
No,
till
it's
the
like,
Maharashtra
it's like the election denial guys. They will always come up with something that, the reason why they did this was if they had won 400, we would have definitely said the EVMs were rigged. So they kind of did a little bit, but they still held power. So now the EVMs... So that thing is always there. This is one thing which I find amazing. In the US... the election is rigged is an absolute metaphor for the looniest of the right-wing guys. In India, it is for the left-wing guys. Like this exact same thing is, so that's why I think there is no left or right. There is the extremes and the moderates. It doesn't matter what you say. The extremes say the exact same thing. They just, same words, here, there. So, COVID denial, COVID vaccine, this extreme guys. They will
eyes
say
eyes on Riyasi.
Yeah.
Eyes on Riyasi versus eyes on Rafa.
Yeah. No, eyes on Riyasi was suppressed by Instagram. At least it appeared so. That's what the tech giants need to come clean on what kind of power they hold on our thoughts on what's been talked about in India. So
the tech giants the fact is that tech giants nowadays are countries in themselves, right?
they're sovereigns in a way.
They're sovereign countries. So they have everything that a country has. They have full jurisdiction. They have full knowledge of the users. So Facebook knows who you are.
Yeah.
And they have immense resources just in terms of money, right? So they have, but who are they answerable to? They're answerable to shareholders, right? And so what happens is the personal opinions and personal biases of the CEO, who's the king, and it's an oligarchy rather. So it's not just one king. So the board of directors, the shareholders, the activist shareholders, all of them get to decide what gets platformed, what gets deplatformed. So the fact that, Elon Musk takes over Twitter/X, it is now him only. It's like an absolute monarchy. Like he gets to decide. It's his empire. But most other organizations don't work like that. It is a very complex interplay of what the shareholders want, what the US government is using as a bargaining chip. So they will say, hey, you want to come for a congressional hearing on your data protection policies of how you're or would you like to do this instead? So
there are ways and ways.
Yes. So they know, right? So that is why they'll say, okay, you want to tell us about this guy's Twitter activities, or would you like to come and face Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on? So no, okay, I'll take that. Yeah, okay. So these kinds of things happen all the time. And so when you brought up big tech, you have to understand it is no different than dealing with a country. It's a country. So Facebook is a country which sits within another country. So obviously, since it is an US-based company, it will obviously give priority to the US, right? So it's just the way it is. But yes, that's a fascinating topic. I don't think that people talk about it enough. We think of countries as US and foreign affairs, but what about Facebook affairs? What about what's going on with Google? What is Amazon doing?
Yeah,
that actually touches our lives much more than what Britain is doing in this day and age.
True. On that note, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me
on this, and we had an interesting conversation. So those who do not follow, do follow Greatbong. and on X, and you're on Facebook and Insta too?
Yes.
On Facebook and Insta too. Thank you so much, Arnab.
Thank you for having me again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching or listening to this edition of the ANI podcast with Smita Prakash. Do like or subscribe on whichever channel you have seen this or heard this. Namaste. Jai Hind. Click here to watch the previous episodes.